Welcome back to another episode of the Consistency Engine podcast. My name's Dane Patton, one of your hosts, as well as my good friend here, Chase Collier. Chase, how you doing today?
Doing good. Enjoying this weird summer so far.
Yeah, it's hard to call it summer when it's like 60s and 70s, but we'll take it, I guess.
Yes, and don't know when this episode will air, but yesterday, day before was the summer solstice, longest day of the year. It was cloudy the entire day, and it did not feel like the longest day of the year.
Yeah, it was gloomy, and it's definitely different when the sun doesn't show up.
Yes.
Yeah. So today's podcast, I think it might be like an underrated topic that we should talk about more often. And
should we communicate about it?
Yeah, that exactly we should, because we're talking about communication in this episode and how key communication is in really all things that we do in life. You know, when I think about, you know, the problems that people face, usually it's not necessarily a discipline problem. It's usually a problem when it comes to communication. And I think we'll talk about that. We'll kind of dive in, because communication on all fronts, you know, whether we're talking about business and leading a team, whether we're talking about, you know, raising a family with children, or your relationship with your wife, or any of that stuff, you know, how we communicate as adults, as human beings is important in personal growth, transformation, development, all of that stuff.
Another route, which may be another episode, is communication is both internal and external. And we've talked so much about like positive reinforcement, extreme ownership, and all of that kind of goes down the internal communication to yourself. Because so many people, when they're trying to do something new, they're growing, or they're in a rough patch, they're not open to having those conversations with themselves that they need to in order to change. But on the external side, which will be what we talk about on this episode, is so many problems in today's world come down to communication. Yes, there's other factors, there's circumstances that come up, but communication is a solution for so many problems out there, and it is not talked about enough.
Yeah, and you know, anytime we are having these podcasts, you know, I try to relate to the experiences that I've lived through, and how the things that I've kind of reflected on, how those can help other people. And I think back to the place where I was when I was overweight and I was a heavy drinker, and how I transformed my life. And the biggest breakthrough that I had to do was I had to get brutally honest with myself. I had to communicate with myself. I had to stop telling myself lies. I had to stop making excuses for who I was and what I was doing, and I had to get clear communication on, okay, you're not living the life that you can live. You're not living up to the expectations that you should have for yourself, and I had to get rid of all that stuff. And just like I said, get brutally honest, and that's difficult because we tell ourselves too many stories. We believe too many lies that we make up about the situation that we're in. And if more people could do that, I think that we would be further along in our health, in our society, and then, you know, our mental health and in relationships, all of that kind of stuff would greatly improve.
The brutally honest point is so important. If you're trying to go somewhere, if you're trying to change something in life, if you're trying to just improve, be brutally honest about it, whether it's fitness, business, personal transformations, relationships with spouses or significant others. Is if you can't properly communicate, you're not going to be able to improve that situation. And kind of my experience going back to college-ish, post-college, is when I started on the entrepreneurial journey, all of those excuses and voices and things we've been told and programmed for years of, that's not what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to do this, follow these steps, this is how you were raised, you were never shown how to do this, it's too difficult. All of those things are things in your head that you need to get brutally honest about, and you can talk through them with yourself, as weird as that sounds. And it may be homework for everyone listening, but when's the last time you had a conversation with yourself? And was it something that you were being honest to yourself, or just filling it with excuses or explanations that you don't know why you're saying those?
Yeah, I remember back when I started taking a walk around Holmes Lake. And that was one of the first times where I really started having these internal conversations with myself. And it's like almost 2.5 miles around that lake, and I'd walk it. When I first started, I'd walk it once, and then I'd get to a point where I was walking it twice. So I was walking almost 5 miles, and I would just be, talking about who I was, and envisioning this version of myself, and how do I become that person, and really just getting that inner dialogue about it. And there were some difficult conversations that I had with myself, but I was out in nature, surrounded by the beauty that there is of trees and grass and water and animals and all that kind of stuff. I was in the sun, getting some sunlight on my skin and my eyes, and then just having this conversation and stacking those things together. It really changed who I was as a person. And when you're going up a hill, I don't want to do this. Well, I'm doing it anyway. I'm just kept pushing myself, and I talk about my business, and I talk about my marriage. I talk about my kids, and who I wanted to be as a dad for them. And it just changed my life, because I was honest with myself and said, you know what, you're never going to be the person that you think you can be if you don't do this right now, and doing that non-negotiable.
With the communication internally with yourself and trying to change habits, not to say that you have bad habits, but if you're trying to build more new habits, good habits, you need to be able to communicate them clearly to yourself outside of just thinking about it. And there's so many studies out there that show if you say it, you listen to it, you write it, you see it, it's going to impact and ingrain so much deeper. So if you're just in your head oh, I'll go to the gym tomorrow, talk it out loud, write it down, make sure that all of those different sensory pieces are engaged as well, because it will make it so much higher probability of happening than just thinking it in your head.
Yeah, I love that too. Writing it, writing down, putting that out into the universe is kind of how I think about it. Whether you have a vision board, or whether you have a daily journal, or you use Facebook as a digital journal like I do, and just stuff like that I think is important. Or if you have a partner, speaking it to them too, that's helped quite a bit. The one, like I said before when we started, most people's problems usually comes down to some sort of a communication problem. I think about in business, most of the time, if you have an upset customer, it's usually because they just weren't communicated properly, or there wasn't clear expectations, and they were upset, or they thought something was going to happen and it didn't happen, or maybe that happens even with your team. You don't have a clear set of guidelines or rules or expectations for your employees, and then there's animosity that builds up. And in today's world that we live in, more people complain than they do to figure out a solution to problems. We're in this day and age where people can get on a keyboard and they can say the worst things that they can think of, but when you're face to face with people, usually they're not going to communicate that to you.
If you can start to take inventory and almost do the postmortems on things that went bad, and ask yourself how many of these were a communication issue, whether it's a client, an employee, somebody in your life, something happened, it was a problem, it was an issue. How many of those come down to communication? Because the majority of them probably are a communication thing. And if you can start to realize that and adapt your style a little bit more to communicate better, to not say over communicate and be a helicopter parent or boss for everybody, but have direct communication. Stop walking the line of, well, I don't know if I should tell them this, or stretching the truth, or saying things just to make your employees happy or people around you happy. That is not the truth. That's going to cause more problems down the road. So you need to be direct with things, even if it is a tough conversation to have.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, like, trying to do things because of your ego and stuff like that. Trying to live a life that you're not actually living. I see that you're communicating that you're one person, but behind closed doors you're somebody else, and that happens in our world way too much. Like, if everybody was just the same person, no matter what, it would be much easier to read people, to understand where they're coming from and what they're doing. But I don't necessarily know if I have the answer to that, but I think the answer is just to continue to live the way that I've been living, and showing up and being an example and being that same person all the time, and hopefully that will help the situation.
A big piece of that comes down to self-esteem and confidence within those people. And do you have transparency? Are you trying to be genuine and authentic? Because it's very hard to communicate or even help on like an emotional level somebody that you don't know what their true self is, because the self that they put out there is not who they truly are. So it's very hard to be able to communicate directly with somebody like that.
Yeah, if you're telling a different story to so many different people, it's hard to, like, what's the truth?
Yes.
Who are you really? Because you tell one person this, and then you tell me this, and then you tell them that, and then you're just you're just living lies.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult way to go through life, and unfortunately, we see too many people do that these days.
With things being difficult, since you brought that up, communication is difficult. Conversations are difficult. And through my life, the people that have been in it, those tough conversations are normally what cause, whether that's in a business, in a relationship with my wife, because those tough conversations are what needs to be discussed. And you should not be afraid to have those direct conversations. It should be a discussion. It should not be an argument, but you shouldn't, I know we've talked before about it, but don't sweep things under the rug. If there are prevalent, prominent issues that need discussed, talk about them. Don't wait weeks or months or years to talk about those things and then have that creates resentment. And nobody wants to resent other people that are in their lives. And if your form of communication by hiding things or not being direct causes people to resent you for whatever reason, that is not something that you want on yourself. But those difficult conversations will grow you, and you shouldn't be afraid of them. But it's almost like us getting on stage. That feeling of getting in front of people and speaking, I know is the same feeling people get when they're going to have a tough conversation. But it needs to be spoken about.
Yeah, and you hear people talk about difficult conversations or tough conversations a lot, and those words get thrown around quite a bit. But in my experience, once you start in it, it's usually not difficult or tough. It's like you're making it bigger in your mind than what it actually turns out to be. And you think that, we have so many differences that it's going to be hard to have a conversation. But the more that you sit down and talk with people face to face and actually have this human connection, you understand that it's much easier to communicate with each other rather than having this perception of who this person is because of something that they've done in their past or whatever. And then you sit down and start talking about it, and it's like, I can see where you're coming from. I can understand why you felt this way or you think this way, and it becomes much easier. We just need to do that more often.
A fun story, and I have grown from this, but when my wife and I had the sports bar what it's been now 5-6 years ago since we sold it. She, in the beginning, would tell me that, hey, this person needs to be let go. They need to be fired. They did X, Y, and Z against our policies.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yep, I'll take care of that. So me and said person would walk into the office, and my job was to fire them. I would walk out of that office with them. They would come in, feed me full of false lies of, hey, I'll do better. I didn't know that. Hey, I didn't realize this is your policy. Yes, you did.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to believe them. So it was very hard for me to be like, nope, here's the line you're across. So Kat was the person who had to go in after that and let them go. I've grown from there, but on the business side, if the tough conversations need had, the longer you delay them, the more damage it is going to cause in a business.
Yeah, when you're talking about business there, for sure. I think that's maybe something that a lot of newer business owners and entrepreneurs they maybe suffer with sometimes, or because like I know I'm guilty of the same thing. Like I want to see the potential in people. I'm like, well, man, you could do this, you could do that, and there's always these opportunities, and like maybe they're not living up to the expectations that they have, but I can see that they could. So yeah, I want to give people more and more opportunities than maybe that they deserve. But then once you get clear with yourself and understand why you have to do the things that you have to do, it becomes easier.
Yes. Communication is not easy. It's one of those things that you just learn, you evolve through your life, through all the scenarios and situations that get thrown your way. Even on the sales side, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, new to sales, new in business, and they're like, why am I not getting any yeses? And I'm like, how many calls have you made? And they're like, well, like 10 a day. And I'm like, one, you're not having enough calls. You're not communicating properly. Are you doing X, Y, and Z in the sales call? Are you being authentic, gaining credibility, building a relationship? And they're like, no, I'm just trying to get a sale.
Mm-hmm.
Communication is so important. And I always say, and I've never been a high pressure salesperson, but everything is sales. Your clients, your employees, the people you're around in life, the things you're trying to do, everything comes down to sales, which comes down to communicating efficiently.
Yeah, it's funny. I just before this, I was having an interview, and we were kind of talking about how everything's sales, and I was like, everything's sales, but really, everything's relationships and communication. That's really what we say it's sales, but it's relationships and communication. So, yeah, I'm constantly selling myself to my wife, so she stays married with me, and we continue to build this life and raise this family and stuff like that. But if I wasn't communicating and I wasn't putting any effort towards the relationship, it wouldn't be there. And same thing with my kids. If I wasn't showing up for them and engaging in the things that they want to be engaged in, that relationship would cease to exist. And it's a two-way street. We've got to be able to listen to what the other person has to say and what they want to be, what they want to talk about, and then they have to listen to us too, and we have to come together there. That's where that high pressure tactics only get you so far. There's people that are good at high pressure and get you to say yes to something that you feel bad about, but guess how many times that person's going to give you a referral for your business or service or whatever it is? It's probably not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to internalize it and feel terrible about themselves because they got had in this scenario. But on the opposite, you actually have a solution, and it's not high pressure. We sit down, we talk about it. We're building a relationship, and if there's something that I can do to help you, and you think that that you know me, you trust me, you like me, then you're probably going to do business with me, and then you're probably going to tell other people about me too. And that's how we've built this business and got to where we are, is leading that way instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, you've got something in your house, I got to come get it out, and you're going to get rabies and blah 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 blah. And it's like, no,
sign this paper now. Sign it.
Yeah, and I've been in too many of those situations where I felt like I was being attacked, or I felt that I was going to be less than if I didn't. And it's like, man, I don't ever want to make people feel like that. So that's not the way we do business, and never going to be able to the way that we do business.
One of the things you said a few minutes ago, because I was listening about it, was listening is also part of communication. We've been talking about us talking and being direct and us communicating, but listening is just as important as us talking. And in relationships, whether, again, business or personal life, we have to listen to what is being said to us. If we're talking with our wives, we need to listen and remember what is said. We need to listen to our employees for feedback and how things can be improved. There's such importance on listening and acting on it, because if you have a conversation with somebody last week and they reach out and they're like, hey, did you ever do this thing you agreed to? And you go, oh, I totally forgot, or I didn't know you said that. That is a listening problem, which causes bad communication.
Yeah, I mean, are you listening to respond, or are you listening to understand? That's kind of the way that I look at it. And I think most people are listening to respond right now. And if you just listen to understand, like that would solve a lot of our divided nation that we have right now, and
Yes.
and the differences that you see that are highlighted so much online and in the news and social media and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, everybody feels like they have to say what it is that they have to get their opinion across, or their way of living is the right way, or the way that they think. And it's like, no, I can be open to multiple things, and then I can take that and understand it, and how do I want to live my life, and how do I want to implement that stuff, and who do I want to do business with, and who do I want to do life with, because I can, I'm not the greatest communicator out there, but I'm definitely getting better each day.
Communication is key. You cannot do life, succeed in life, grow without learning proper communication. It is vital. And we've talked on so many other topics in this, but at the core of it, when you think about creating your goals, that is communicating to yourself. When you think about making a change, getting better in the gym, eating healthier, everything comes down to communication, whether it's internal or external. And it's such a great topic. We may speak on it on future episodes as well. But when you're talking, when you're writing something out, it's so important to communicate properly.
Yeah, and the one part that I wanted to also kind of touch on here when we talk about communication is kind of like, your tonality, the words that you use, and how you show up when you're doing those. Like, I think that's a big key to that too, because there's so many parts of communication that aren't necessarily the verbal part. And I'm sure that you have some experiences where you showed up to an appointment or something like that, and somebody was like all disheveled or weren't taking care of themselves. Like, you have a feeling about how this conversation's going to go before it even starts.
Yep.
Right? Like, oh man, this person's, scatterbrained and shows up and isn't prepared and whatever. And it's like, man, like, I just want to help coach those people and be like, man, just look in the mirror and like see, if you showed up and kind of had your hair taken care of or whatever, like this is going to go completely different, but because you're not showing up in this way that is going to help your sales process out or whatever that is.
There's so much on the visual side of it, and I don't know if it's considered communication or not. But if you got invited to a formal event and you showed up in a t-shirt and shorts, it's almost a visual communication of not respecting the dress code.
Mm-hmm.
And same when you do have meetings with people. If I get on the schedule with someone that I look up to, could be a coach, could be something like that, and I show up like I just got out of bed, it's almost disrespectful for that person. And if you're trying to sell them on you, you need to and the tonality part, I can't I can't remember who or how it was said, but you can have the same sentence with different placement of commas, different tonality, and it sounds like 10 different emotional roller coasters.
Mm-hmm.
It can all come out positive, it can come out angry, and the way that you communicate to other people, you need to think about that a little bit. People make fun of me, don't want to say make fun, but give me grief because I always say good morning, good afternoon, good evening in emails or text messages or on phone calls. And people have said, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, I don't know if your day has been good, bad, or if anyone said this to you. So I want to make a statement and say something kind. And if that's the way you start a conversation, it's probably going to go more in the direction that you're thinking than, hi, how can I help you?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons, like, kind of we started this podcast. We talked about, people need to be reminded more than they need to be taught. And sometimes you can hear the same thing from multiple different people, but it clicks once you hear it from somebody else in a different tone or, a different choice of words when they're communicating that message to people. There's not a whole lot of new information out there. A lot of it's recycled stuff. We talk a lot about the same things that we've been learning through books and podcasts and conferences and masterminds and our life experiences. And we're sharing that, and we're communicating that in a way that hopefully maybe is going to impact somebody out there, because maybe they've heard this topic before, but not in the way that we're highlighting it.
One last thing that I want to hit on is send letters. If you have a client, an employee that you're showing appreciation for, had a great one-to-one, got a big deal under contract, or even your family birthday, stuff like that, send a handwritten letter. It will go extremely far, because in today's world of technology, yes, I love when 100 plus people say happy birthday to me on Facebook. I love that many people notice it. Yes, they get notified that it is my birthday on that date. But when you get a handwritten something in the mail, it just hits different. They took the time. They thought of something that wasn't just copy-paste or prompted for them, and it showed that they were willing to go the extra mile. So if you're trying to impress somebody, if you're trying to give thanks to somebody or show appreciation, send a handwritten letter. Go get a book of stamps and send some letters in the mail.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a hack when it comes to, whether you're trying to, build a relationship with somebody that you want to do business with, or maybe, somebody that you're interested in having them be a mentor or a coach for you or something like that, and building some sort of connection. And, I love the writing notes. I love the idea of sending them voice messages or video messages, something like that. I love the idea of, following them on social media and trying to interact with their content and try to, maybe ask some questions so you can get some sort of dialogue, or come in and leave some sort of value and communicate that to them, that and how much that helps, because then people start to see that. They start to visualize. They understand who you are, your name, and all that kind of stuff. Like that's been a huge key. And then just the connection part of it. Like if you just go out and you send 2 to 5 like audio messages, just saying, hey, I do this with some of with my friends and some of my acquaintances and stuff, and I'm following them online. I see stuff that they're posting, whatever. I just send them a voice message like, hey, you're killing it out there. Like, I love to see that you're winning. I love to see, how you're helping people. Love to see how you show up for your family, for your community. Like, I love seeing that. Just wanted to let you know that I see you and I appreciate it. And I can't tell you how many times like people just don't do that enough.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, I don't even know what to say because like nobody's done that to me, or it's been a year and a half since somebody told me that they were proud to see what I was doing or whatever. And then you just kind of stay top of mind, and that's huge.
The one thing that I will say do not do is if you send a message like that, do not then ask for a sale. Because I've had that happen to me. I get this great voice message, and it's like, buy my stuff.
Oh, yeah.
No, just do it without any expectation of anything in return.
Yeah, I mean, I get the friend requests almost daily, and then 2 minutes after I accept the friend request, it's like, hey, we just connected on Facebook. Do you need AI assistance or whatever they're trying to sell me at that point in time? No, I'm just talking about reach out to people that are in your circle and commend them, congratulate them, tell them that something that's going to make them feel special. If you can communicate that, well, it does a couple things. It strengthens your relationship. It helps you get better at actually communicating. It's one thing to type it out, but the next thing to say what you're thinking in 30 to 60 seconds, that quick kind of elevator pitch, as if you will, but you're getting that information out there, and it makes you feel good. Be the change that you want to see in the world. So if you would like to have more people do that to you, you want to see that kind of energy, you've got to go out and create it. You've got to go out and put it out there, because it'll come back to you if you put it out there enough.
So, getting close to the end of the episode, as far as homework or things to do, takeaways from this episode goes, I would say if you haven't done any video or audio messages for someone out of just kindness, do it. Same with a letter to somebody, handwritten letter. Could even be to your significant other, one of your parents, one of your children, because it will light them up. And just going back to earlier, take inventory on some of the problems that have happened in your life, in your business, and think about if they could have been fixed with different communication. And since we're on the topic of communication, Dane, if you and I want to say some kind words to everyone watching as our voice or video message, I would say, just for everyone listening, thank you for being here. You are making an impact. You're putting effort and energy into bettering yourself, and you're doing more than the majority of people out there. So be proud of the difference that you are making and the progress you are making, even if it is small at this point. If you continue, you will achieve your goals, and just keep making progress every day.
Yeah, I love that one, Chase, and I would say the same thing. Like, if you're here listening to this, you're part of the 1% already. You're already doing something more than 99% of the people out there they're not doing. They're not showing up and trying to get information to better themselves. We started this because we wanted to share our experiences and how much we've grown and developed personally and professionally. And like I said, I wish that I would have found somebody like me 10 years ago, and who could who's in that place that I was, and how could they get to where they want to faster, and just following along, listening, and you're showing up, and that matters, and there's greatness inside of you. So keep doing the work, and thanks for being here.
That was another episode of the Consistency Engine podcast.